Welcome to class. My name is Adeni Lanri Oladunjoye from the Royal Tutors, and it is my pleasure to be connected with you on this virtual space today. In our last class, we began to look at how to tackle AQA GCSE English Language Paper 1, Question 2 for the June 2017 examination past paper. And we looked at a few things. So we looked at the structure of the exam, question 2 to be precise, how that there is an extract from the entire extract given to you. And what I want you to do is to analyze a few things, making use of words and phrases, and also making use of language techniques and features, and at the same time they want you to make use of sentence form. In our last class, I went ahead to explain that you need words like nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. And at the same time, I outlined a few language techniques. Do you still remember? And if yes, can you say one or two uh, language techniques? Well, you've written them down. I believe you're right. So we talked about a few language techniques like periphrases, oxymoron, hyperbole, alliteration, simile, metaphor, onomatopoeia, euphemism, and all of that. So another thing that I mentioned was that for question 2, you only need to spend 10 good minutes. Like you need to spend 10 minutes and you only have 8 marks. You don't need to write long essays. You need just 2 paragraphs. One major thing that I also talked about in the last class is the fact that you need to make use of what we call the peel paragraph. So this is where we have the P as in the point, the E as in the evidence, the second E as in the explanation, and then we have the L, which is the linking word. All right, so this is very, very important. In today's class, we are going to be analyzing this together, and we're going to develop the 2 paragraphs together. Are you ready? Okay, let's go now. So I want us to read this paragraph again, and while we read it, we're going to be zooming in on some words, and at the end of the day, I want us to come up with a point. I know that we already did this towards the end of the last video, but then I want us to do it again because this is a new video. Okay? Roosevelt looked out of the windows. The street was blurred and misty, but the light striking on the pans turned their dullness to pearl and silver, and the jewelry shops seen through these were fairy palaces. Her feet were horribly wet, and she knew the bottom of her skirt and petticoat would be coated with black, greasy mud. There was a sickening smell of warm humanity. It seemed to be oozing out of everybody in the bus, and everybody had the same expression, sitting so still, staring in front of them. Rosabelle stared suddenly and unfastened the 2 top buttons of her coat. She felt almost stifled. Through her half-closed eyes, the whole row of people on the opposite seat seemed so resolved into one meaningless, staring face. So we've just read this. In the last class, I underlined a few things. Number one, the street was blurred and misty. And I remember I started from this part. I said, her feet were horribly wet. Okay, and she knew the bottom of her skirt and petticoat would be coated with black greasy mud. So this gives some certain sense of feeling that it might have rained. Okay, so and then what other thing? Say there was a sickening smell. Sickening smell. This is alliteration, repetition of consonant sound. So these are the things you're supposed to look out for. Sickening smell of warm humanity. It seemed to be oozing out of everybody in the bus, and everybody had the same expression. So, yeah, this is there, sitting so still, staring in front of them. Roosevelt stared suddenly and unfastened the 2 top buttons of her coat. So, why would she all of a sudden, you know, unfastened, loosen the 2 top buttons of her coat? That means she probably felt uncomfortable. All right, so she felt almost stifled. You need to zoom in. for you to be able to get your point for this paragraph. So the question is, how does the writer use the language here to describe Roosevelt's bus journey home? In one word, how can you describe her bus journey home? Is it something that is beautiful? Is it amazing? Is it uncomfortable or unpleasant? With all of these things that you have read here, how or yeah, how would you describe the bus journey in one sentence? That one sentence is going to be our point for the first body paragraph. Is that okay? So so you can put it down in your notebook right now in one sentence. How would you describe her bus journey? For me, I feel like it was uncomfortable and unpleasant. That is going to be my main point. It was uncomfortable and unpleasant, and I'm going to bring out words to buttress my point. All right, so we're having a model response here. And yeah, so the first thing we need is a point, and we have agreed that Roosevelt's bus journey home was described as unpleasant and uncomfortable. And of course, yes, I think we have some evidence in the text where we have that from the beginning the street was already described as blood and misty. All right, so let's see, let's put our first point here. But then how then do we write our first point, like our point? How do we write it? Do we write it by, rephrasing this particular question? We add some words to it, we use synonyms for some of them, and then we're good to go. So we can have right here, the writer uh, uses descriptive language to show that Roosevelt's bus journey home is uncomfortable and unpleasant. First stop. That is the right. Yeah. So we have it here that writer uses descriptive language to show that Roosevelt's bus journey home is uncomfortable and unpleasant. Right? So let's just put this right here. Let's make it darker. This. All right, good. So now, how do we get our evidence? Let us pick our evidence from the text as fast as possible. So, like I said, you can see from this point where we have it that the street was blood and misty. All right, the street where Roosevelt was coming from was already blood and misty. You know what that means? That's already uncomfortable. And then the smell on the bus was described as a sickening smell. You know what I mean? So these are the major two key words that we're going to be making use of for our first paragraph. Of course, we're going to extract some other points, but let us start with this point and then we report them in our first paragraph. So how then do we write the second sentence? So you need to start with a starter, a sentence starter. So we have something like, this is evidence mm, when, oh, sorry, when the writer describes the street as blood and misty. So let's see. Type it. Okay, good. Okay, as blood and misty. That's not the only thing, so we have to close the quote and say, and the smell on the bus as a sickening um, smell of warm humanity So we have to close this right here, and then we can say, now let's use a comma for the full stop. We can say this creates a strong sense of physical and emotional discomfort. Beautiful. So let us try to zoom in on some words. We're going to be zooming in on this word right here, sickening and humanity. Personally, I feel sickening, the word sickening has a connotation or has negative connotations, okay? And then humanity right here, sickening smell of warm humanity. It's trying to talk about the fact that the closeness in the bus is just too much. It's like to the extreme. We're very, very close. That's why it looks like she could literally smell the people's body odor. Or yeah, that is exactly what it is. So, but then let us zoom in. Don't forget that question two, apparently, basically, the basic thing you need to do for question two is that you have to still zoom in on some of the words. So, sickening, a sickening smell, we can say that sickening is an adjective. Okay, so we can say the adjective sickening has negative connotations. Mm, yeah, and suggests that the environment is overwhelming, no, mm, uh, and almost uh, no sin for Roosevelt. Okay. While the phrase, like I said the other time, humanity, all right, good. While the phrase humanity um, implies, let's use the word implies the oppressive uh, closeness, I would say, oppressive closeness of the other passengers. Sorry. So, so still within this paragraph, let us look at another point, evidence, and explanation. So if you look at the text, the extract, you're going to actually find out that the the writer talked about the fact that Roosevelt's feet were horribly wet, okay, and that she knew the bottom of her skirt and petticoat would be coated with black greasy mud. So we have to touch on. We've talked about a sickening smell of warm humanity, and yeah, that was quite good. So let us to start a new point within this paragraph. We need a transition word, and we can say in addition. The writer describes uh, Roosevelt's feet as horribly wet. Of course, yes, we have to put that in the quotes. Okay, and what again? Clothes being coated with black greasy mud. So we close the quote, which emphasizes how physically and unpleasant and grim a situation is. Let us see if we can make use of imagery. What imagery can we see here? We have she felt almost stifled. That's like painting pictures in your mind. So imagery basically is like using the five senses to communicate images to you. They paint pictures in your mind using words. So we can make use of that. You can say that the writer also uses imagery uh, when Rosabelle feels almost stifled. You can see that this suggested that the crowded bus makes her feel trapped, apparently, and unable to breathe properly. Now, we need a link, the last expression to link it back to the top. So we can say that overall, these language choices help the reader understand that Roosevelt's journey is not only physically uncomfortable, but also emotionally hmm, draining. This reinforces how unpleasant an experience is. So right here, this is our first paragraph. I said you need to write two paragraphs and you've written the first paragraph. Very quickly, let us annotate our paragraphs. Let us look at what we have done. And yeah, one major thing you also need to learn to do is to vet your work. In other words, you have to proofread. Whenever you're done writing or typing, you need to go back to your work and check if there are errors in your work. Could be spelling errors, and you see me over time going back to, check my work and all of that. So let us see. We said our first point here is that the writer uses descriptive language to show that Roosevelt's bus journey home is uncomfortable and unpleasant. This right here stands for our P, top point. But let's see if we have accurate evidence. Now, like I said, one of the things that helps you get a very good score on this question is when you use accurate evidence, in other words, quotes from the extract to buttress your point. Don't say one point and then get an extract or a quote that is not directly talking about it. So this is evident when the writer describes the street as blood and misty. Okay, and the smell on the bus as a sickening smell of warm humanity. Now, don't forget that we're looking at the description of our bus journey home, our bus journey home. So basically, the bus is on the street, and we can't talk about a journey home without talking about that street. So how exactly does the street look like? So it is blurred and misty, okay? And of course, yes, Roosevelt is in the bus. What exactly is going on in the bus? So we have a sickening smell of warm humanity. This is, we have two quotes here. In other words, we have our evidence here. Then we have the explanation of this evidence. How do you link the evidence to with the explanation? You need to start with a sentence starter. And this is you making use of words like this creates. All right. So we have this creates a strong sense of physical and emotional discomfort. That's an explanation. And then we bring up another evidence again to buttress the fact that um, Roosevelt's bus journey home is uncomfortable and unpleasant. So we have the adjective sickening. Okay, sickening has negative connotations and suggests that the environment is overwhelming and almost unseating for Roosevelt. Okay, while the phrase humanity implies the oppressive of you see, this is why we have to go through our work. Something is missing here, and we have to put it back in order. So, what exactly is it? Implies the oppressive dash of other passengers. Oh, yeah, I did mention the word closeness, and I have to put it back in here. The oppressive closeness, right? So, we have closeness. Don't forget, you have to go through your work whenever you're done. This helps you to you know, narrow into your work and see if there are things you're missing out on. So, oppressive closeness of the other passengers. This is also another point that we have here. So, now we said in addition, we're bringing up another point now. The writer describes Roosevelt's feet as horribly wet. This is still talking about the fact that Roosevelt's bus journey home is uncomfortable and her clothes being coated with black, greasy mud, which emphasizes how physically and unpleasant and grim her situation is. The writer also uses imagery. Don't forget that we are talking about making use of words and phrases according to what we have here. Words and phrases, and then we need language features and techniques. And we have used some of this quite all right. We've used some of this. So let's see how we used words then. Blurred and misty, these are just adjectives and they are under words. All right. And then we have a sickness smell of warm humanity. This right here, it's just like a phrase, I would say. Yeah, that's a phrase. That's a phrase right there. So let's see under this place where we have imagery. Imagery is an example of language techniques. Okay, so we say that the writer also uses imagery when Roosevelt feels almost stifled. This suggested that a crowded bus makes her feel trapped and unable to breathe properly. Right? That is exactly what it suggested. Overall, these language choices, this is like the last sentence that ties everything together. So we have these language choices help the reader understand that Roosevelt's bus journey is is not only physically uncomfortable, but also emotionally draining. Right? So this reinforces how unpleasant the experience is for her. Right, so good. Okay, now we've been able to do one paragraph together. Don't forget that I am so intentional about helping you build a very strong paragraph or building strong body paragraphs to, you know, um, respond to GCSE questions. So this is why we're doing this step by step, step by step. Nonetheless, I'm going to give you a task, which is going to be your take home work. And this task is going to be very, very simple. What exactly is this task? You need to do a second paragraph. Okay, we have talked about a major point for the first paragraph on how the writer uses descriptive language to show that Rosabel's bus journey home is uncomfortable and unpleasant. Then you're going to come up with a new paragraph, okay? Come here and talk about how which other way did the writer use to describe Rosabel's bus journey home? Which other language? And what did this language achieve? I can see one other thing here, but then you're going to try it all by yourself. Okay? Do it and let me know what your response is. Don't forget that this video is brought to you by the Royal Tutors. Once again, my name is Adeni Lanre Oladunjoy, and I will see you in my next class. Bye.